Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press briefing regarding the Ministry of Education. As this is my first meeting with you as the Minister of Education, I wanted to do something just a little different and provide you with a status report on the Ministry of Education. I'm pleased to have with me the Commissioner of Education, Mrs. Wendy McDonald, chairs of the two Ministry of Education boards. But before I go any further, I'd like to introduce them to you. First, Mr. Anthony Francis. He is the new chairman of the Cedar Bridge Academy Board of Governors, and where's Mrs. Patterson? Ms. Hella Patterson. She's the chair of the Exemption Committee. I want you to see who they are. Their role is very important. They are representatives of the persons who share responsibility for the governance of the public education system in Bermuda. Along with their board members, they provide me with advice and take the lead in providing oversight of our schools and the school system. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. You will have a seat.
If you noted the membership of my boards in the official gazette, you will have noted that I have maintained some consistency in order to ensure that there is handover and sustainability to some of the initiatives that are presently underway. I want to publicly thank these board chairs and the members of all the education boards for their dedication and willingness to accept this responsibility. It has now been 2 months since I was appointed Minister of Education. I have determined the way forward after spending the bulk of that time reading, listening, and learning about what is going on in the education system. The speech from the throne read by His Excellency on February 8th set out some of the highlights of the Ministry of Education. Specifically, we noted that the Career Pathways program is to be expanded. The Career Pathways is a program that emanated out of the Mincy report. Professor Ronald Mincy, a Columbia University scholar, was commissioned to explore the reasons why young black males fail to secure employment in Bermuda's local economy. Upon completing the study, Dr. Mincy recommended a Career Pathways program. Modified to meet the needs of Bermuda, the Career Pathways program is a dynamic partnership between Bermuda's industry partners, the Ministry of Education, the National Training Board, and the Bermuda College. The ministry rolled the program in September 2012. The program is designed to provide public education students with pathways to greater preparation for career and college opportunities. The program consists of 5 areas of study: college preparation courses, applied technology, business and hospitality, health and human services, and athletics, art, and communication. Presently, there are over 200 students from both the Berkeley Institute and the Cedar Bridge Academy involved. And I am pleased by the wealth of support coming from industry as well as from various departments within the Bermuda government. I have already been creating greater linkage with industry and the Bermuda community. These linkages will allow for the expansion of technology and technical service opportunities for students in the technical service sector, as well as increased opportunities in the culinary, hospitality service sector, and the financial services sector. I am presently in discussions with the industry sector regarding the acquisition of human resources to design, plan, and implement the lead for the next phase of the program. The goal in expanding the program is to bring Bermudian students closer to the different classifications of occupation in Bermuda. The refining of the program at the senior school level will assist us to build that pipeline that will eventually see the introduction of the Career Pathways programs at the middle school level. I have already had discussions with the Bermuda College Chair, Mrs. Jill Husbands, and President Dr. Duranda Green. The Bermuda College will become the focus of lifelong learning in Bermuda, with increased opportunities for secondary school students and adult learners to engage in innovative educational opportunities driven by the needs of industry. Our only post-education institution will gear Bermuda to develop a diverse and educated workforce directly connected to new and existing jobs to help Bermuda's economic recovery. The Bermuda College will play an even greater role in the training and or retraining of Bermudians in key areas of the economy to ensure that workforce needs of Bermuda are met by Bermudians. It is my fundamental belief that the public education system in addition to being comprehensive, must also be fully inclusive for all of our students. However, this has been an area of concern to parents of special needs children. Further, this has also been an area highlighted by the Ombudsman for Bermuda. In response, the ministry has engaged in a preliminary consultation exercise, which has seen the development of draft proposals for policy on special education. In the coming months, I will table a green paper on special education. The purpose of this discussion paper will be to consult broadly to develop a policy for inclusion and special education that will meet the needs of the 21st century Bermuda. Bermuda's move to a comprehensive and more inclusive public education system has resulted in significant and fundamental changes to Bermudian society, ensuring that nearly all children were educated with similarly aged peers has contributed to more understanding of diverse abilities, improved social interaction for many diverse learners, and provide more exposure to a range of curricula for many students who previously had no choice but to attend separate special schools. The proposals contained in the consultation paper are in large part a response to a lack of confidence in the ability of the public education system to meet the educational needs of all students, especially those who are gifted and/or experience mild, moderate, or severe barriers to learning. The proposals are designed to acknowledge and eliminate the inadequacy of the current provision, to demonstrate a commitment to change and transformation, to initiate broad consultation regarding the policy direction that the government of Bermuda and the Ministry of Education would like to take, and to improve student achievement and student outcome. The government will also invest in the expansion of early, mandatory childhood screenings at the Child Development Program beyond the age of 2 years to give parents better access and identification of problems as soon as they are apparent. This includes providing early childhood screenings 12 months of the year and expanding the 2-year-old screenings up to the age of 4 years. Effective early intervention is a key factor in lifelong learning and success. Additionally, early intervention can assist us to identify families and/or children in crisis so that the assistance can be provided at the earliest opportunity, so that children do not carry the burden of their home situation into the classroom unaddressed. The Ministry of Education will also improve the quality of teacher recruitment by raising the bar on the required teaching qualifications for all subject area and specializations, identify the attributes of high-quality teacher training programs, and by increasing the standards for recruitment. It is commonly known that good teachers make the difference in the educational lives of their students. Since coming into the ministry, I have seen and met hard-working principals, teachers, and central office staff who are focused on improving student outcomes. They are focused on the quality of teaching instruction, and they are focused on meeting and exceeding student needs. I recently met with representatives of the Bermuda Union of Teachers who stated categorically that if we expect to see success in public education, we as the leaders have to believe in public education. Although it is still early days, I do accept that even before I came, the journey to reform our education system had already begun. The journey began with the introduction of the Cambridge curriculum 2 years ago. And then in June 2012, we set our first benchmark for performance against an international standard. This was indeed a significant step. Now the expectation is that as teachers grow in their understanding of the curriculum and how to deliver it, and students also have greater exposure to it, we expect to see improvement in student outcomes. Concern has been expressed regarding middle school education. I have found that the ministry, principals, and teachers were already looking at the middle school concept and considering what we must do to enhance our outcomes at that level to better prepare our students to enter secondary school. Applied academics, or technical education, was introduced in September 2012 in the form of the career pathways. While this is significant, the government has committed to the introduction of technical education beginning at the middle school level. I have already begun to look at how we do this. However, the task at hand is to evaluate how and when we can move this forward. I believe that the public education system requires stability and consistency in order to measure the progress it is making, to embed the Cambridge curriculum, and to establish the structure that will surround the curriculum to achieve well-rounded students. I intend to communicate, to consult, and I commit to keep all of our stakeholders informed: principals, teachers, parents, and the general public. In this approach, there will be other press briefings in the future that will focus on specific issues that face education and the Ministry of Education. The commitment of the One Bermuda Alliance is to deal with all matters transparently and to ensure that issues are resolved in the best interest of all Bermudians. The OBA has not inherited a perfect set of circumstances in education, but the people of Bermuda elected us to govern because we promised to be more open. To that end, these press briefings will set out the issues, and a direction is set out in our platform to achieve the best results in education for Bermuda and our people. The next briefing will be in March, and we will set out an issue and the proposed solution that will be presented for the public to consider. In closing, I would like to personally extend my profound gratitude to every member of the Ministry of Education staff who perform their jobs admirably every day, as well as every teacher and principal who takes their caring passion to work for the best interests of our children each and every day. Before we take your questions, I would like just to share highlights of the ministry budget and then invite the Commissioner of Education to share a status report on the state of the education system. Budget highlights. It is important to note that the story behind the numbers is that in each of these years, the Ministry of Education was over budget when compared to its original estimate. The estimate for 2013-2014 actually represents the actual expenditure for 2011-2012. And for the first time, we believe that we can operate within this cap. The original in 2009-2010 was $128 million. The original in 2010-11 was $123 million, and then revised down to $118 million. The original for 2011-2012 was $110 million, and then revised upward to $120 million. The original for this fiscal year was $115 million, and it has been revised upward to $128 million. As we look at slide 3, as relates to grants and scholarships, the present act provides for students to be provided with funding for full tuition, room and board, and airfare. The intent of the proposed amendments is to allocate a cap on the amount the ministry will provide and therefore allow us some control over costs. Even with our planned hiring, we will be below our 2009-2010 and our 2010-2011 established numbers. These are key posts related to special education, which I will shortly be presenting a green paper into the legislature on, and the content specialists are specifically related to teaching and learning. It is important to note that as we close the tech and move to providing individual programming for our at-risk students, they now receive services across the island to meet their particular needs. This has a cost as opposed to attempting to meet their needs with a one-size-fits-all approach. We are providing the funding in the upcoming year's budget to implement the proposed mandatory screenings for children. This is in conjunction with the Ministries of Health and Community and Cultural Development. We will continue to seek ways to cut costs, focus on the fact that we have reduced non-salary costs by 22% in the first 9 months of 2012-2013 compared to the same time last year. I now call on our Commissioner, Mrs. Wendy McDonald, to come forward and give you a status update on the education. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Southside, the place where we do our business every day for the Ministry of Education. I recognize the time constraints, and so what I'd like to do right now is just share with you a few key messages that you need to know about the Ministry of Education and the work that we're doing. I'd also like to thank the Minister for acknowledging the work that has been done, not only in this building, but in the schools every day. First of all, I want you to know up front that this Department of Education, this Ministry of Education, is on the move. And I'm not saying this out of just emptiness. I'm telling you that today things are quite different in the public education system. We have validation beyond Dr. Hopkins. I also want you to note that it's time to change the narrative about public education. There's a lot of evidence currently that there is improvement in student learning and achievement, that we have planning and processes and documents in place, that we're having very deep conversations about high-impact strategies to improve student achievement. And I want to thank the personnel in the schools and also in this building for doing the work every day on the front line and making an effort to improve the needs of our students. Many of you know that we have a system improvement plan that's called the Blueprint that is based on the Hopkins recommendations. And I would be more than willing to share at a later date the things that we have done with regard to the Hopkins report, because I think it's really important for you to note that from the time it was presented in 2007, we have been engaged on executing this document. It's very important also to pay attention to the fact that instruction is really the most significant core element that impacts student achievement. And we have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to reprofessionalize the teachers, dramatically improve the quality of teaching, and also do something about working with our principal leadership. Shaping the professional is the key to our success as a system. And this is not just based on research or our instinct. This is based on what's happening. Last night I had, as I do each evening, and no offense to any of the media here, watching the BBC, I'm also watching what's happening in Singapore and Malaysia and Hong Kong. And I want you to note that in Singapore, for example, when they began to improve their system, and that started way back in 1983, they went to a point where they're considered now great to excellent, and that was because they spent an inordinate amount of time, almost 3 decades, looking at how they can build capacity of their teachers and their educators, which is what we are doing as well. I also want you to note that improvement takes time, and that's why I segued into the time it has taken for places like Finland and Sweden and Hong Kong and other places, that it took several decades. And I think it's important to note also that the minister has said that we need to ensure that we have sustainability. This is our Achilles heel, sustaining the long haul. That's when we'll see improvement. And I'm pleased to note that this is going to stay in place, because institutionalizing change takes time. There's no quick fix. It requires will and persistence and a commitment to stay the long haul. I also want you to know something about world-class education. We cannot afford to provide a poor quality education for our students. We will continue to create an underclass if we should do so. We are all aware of the importance of a 21st century education, which means that students must be able to think critically. They must be able to adapt to change, collaborate and communicate, and solve problems. We also know the benefits and cost if we fail to educate our children in this country. The benefits, obviously, will impact the quality of life, the students' ability to self-advocate. It affects their income, and it affects the national income. We need to ensure that all of our students, because we are a comprehensive system, all of our students get a good education so that they can compete locally and globally. And that's one of the reasons why we adopted the Cambridge curriculum, which serves as an international benchmark. I'm coming to an end, and that has to do with the fact that we brought somebody down in 2011, 2012, and that was Dr. Glaze. And she is a noted educator who has worked in many of the high-performing countries, and also is a colleague in the sense that she and Dr. Hopkins know each other. They have worked and side by side, parallel, and she came in and she had a look at what was happening in our schools. And she said up front, I want you to note that this system is poised for greatness. You just have to stay the course. That's in her report in 2012. So it's important to see that from 2007 to 2012, there's been a continual incremental change and improvement. And I will be more than willing at some other point, not at this point, to go in details with you about the Hopkins report, how it's been implemented, what we're seeing, what needs to happen next. It's not perfect, but we are not where we were before. The ship isn't facing the right direction, and we need your support in making sure that the message gets out that the public school system is improving, because the narrative about the public school system failing has to cease and desist, because the affirmation and the validation that we get from the community assist us to do our job. It impacts teachers, it impacts students, it impacts support staff, it impacts all of us. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Now we're open for questions.
Good afternoon. I have two questions, please. One is, why has the decision been taken to make the developmental testing mandatory when for so many years it was said that they wouldn't do that? So why is it not mandatory? And then appended to that question is that going to put stress on the workers, because then who's going to police the parents who are non-compliant?
You're talking with regards to child development program.
Yes.
The two-year screen.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep. We have found that a lot of the students who aren't screened entering the year one public education system are actually being referred back for screening because of some challenges one way or the other. What we looked at was, let's standardize the process so that the majority of our 2-year-olds to 4-year-olds are screened. And in order to support the child development program, we are increasing the staff complement that is in this budget so that we have all the appropriate staff without overworking anyone to ensure a very smooth transition, but to more importantly provide the resources needed for our 2 to 4-year-olds before they enter school.
And my second question is, in your speech, Minister, you said that basically ministry staff and department staff need to believe in the public education system. But then what about all of those teachers and principals who have children in the private school? What message does that send to?
My favorite question that I was looking forward to receiving. I'm going to take this approach, which, and I speak for myself as well as a parent. I'm not easily distracted from the goal in front of us, and I think for far too long, education has been distracted on getting the outcomes needed for all of our students. For far too long, we have questions, well, if you believe in the system, put your children in. If you believe, you do this. If you believe, you do that. I believe when we set a direction, we have to be very careful not to be distracted. I'm not calling any staff member to find out where their child is, as I know they're not going to call me about mine. But I take the point, and it is very important that as we transition education, all of us need to be supportive, even to the extent that, yes, our children should be participators, as must we be participators in the system. I'm not, however, at this stage going to be looking to have a popularity campaign or a conscious education campaign. We need to be focused on the job at hand, because right now we have too many conversations going on in Bermuda, but we don't have the right conversation. Until we educate our Bermudian children properly, their advancement into the 83 classes of occupation in Bermuda are diminished, and we can't afford that. So the focus here is we are directing, in particular, that's why the strong emphasis is on the career pathways. We need to direct our students into the pathways of success. Not only our students, but when you consider we have thousands of Bermudians now out of work, and with the economy contracting still, there will be more out of work. You can have all the protests you want about forcing companies to hire Bermudians. if they're not properly trained and they're not properly educated, it's a very difficult and arduous task. So the focus here is getting our Bermudian students and our adult learners into those pathways of success. I accept the suggestion and indeed the conversation that we must have how much are we invested in it ourselves. But I'm not easily distracted from the goal. And as we have further press conferences in the future, that subject will be dealt with accordingly. But I do appreciate the question. Thank you.
Minister, just as Bermuda College, if we have a greater role in training and retraining of Bermudians here in the college, this is going to be in trades. When do you see this coming to fruition?
The development conversations have already begun, Charles. The board chair and the president and I, when we last met, we have already initiated the conversations with industry on how to get, and this is very important, education only works successfully in all the markets that the commissioner spoke about. Industry invested into education at the very core of where we're starting the career pathway. The Bermuda College is in alignment with the two senior schools so that as we get those students come through, they will be right into apprentice management programs. And it's not just the trades. There are so many technology areas, whether it's IT, IS, and the rest, where if we get a local company or even an international company investing in these programs. For example, we have the Bermuda Insurance Institute that has a small series of course offerings here. We don't have underwriting being offered at Bermuda College. We will move to have all of those different disciplines and included, we'll be initiating conversations with the Bermuda Institute of Insurance, Bermuda Insurance Institute, so that we can actually have all of those courses delivered there, and then have the insurance apprenticeship program, which they have, going through the college with industry. The area here, Charles, is there's still a huge demand in the international business model. We're not meeting it. We're going to meet it there. We will also meet the area in technology because, again, the Ministry of Education and indeed the government is focused on the fact that Bermudians are needed in 83 classes of occupation. At present, we're not even meeting half of those. So if we set the goal predicated on meeting the needs of all of the occupations in Bermuda, the college has to be the center of lifelong learning. If I have a gifted child that's in primary school or middle school or in high school, I should be able to direct them through those college courses to ensure success. If I have a high school student who is gifted, I should have them on a track that when they graduate from Cedar Bridge or Berkeley, they should be well on their way to a designation in technology, an associate degree in that area of study. So guess what? An employer is going to look at their student and say, you're already 50% on your way to your associate degree. You have your marine pilot's license. You have your certification as a carpenter. Of course I'll hire you. Because what we're doing is we're ensuring that through the Bermuda College, we get Bermudians to work. That's how they fit in, because the discussions have already begun on how we get investment from industry into the college.
If I may segue into that now, what about the hospitality industry? The young student, which is now we've heard a lot of talk about this. What is actually happening there to get people into the hospitality industry through training?
The training at Bermuda College has been improved over the last few years, particularly since 2006, with the implementation of an industry-based culinary program, industry-based waiter program. The intent now is I'm meeting with the Bermuda Hotel Association in the next couple of weeks to go through with their HR staff what are the requirements. Again, industry investment into education. What are their requirements for the hotels? So that we deliver in the high schools and at Bermuda College what are the requisite learning courses and requirements to assure them not just, and this is important, Charles, it's not just entry level that I'm interested in. We have 85% of our chefs in Bermuda are guest workers. It's not good enough to have our Bermudians as entry-level chefs. We will look at developing a culinary program that takes that 85% down as we take the level of Bermudians up, so that our hospitality area has more Bermudians. And eventually, Charles, here's where this gets interesting. We will develop a Bermudian cuisine. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Fire away.
No, 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 Charles.
This is not a question, this is just some good trouble in the chair. You said the next meeting will be held in March, and they'll set out an issue and proposal solution will be presented for the public to consider. That expression trouble. The public to consider?
I'll give you an example. Before I came here, there was a Ministry of Education. Education has always been kicked around, unfortunately, like a football for a number of reasons. Whether it's graduation, whether it's social promotion, you name it, the ministry has been tarred with a bad brush, unfairly, in my opinion, now that I've sat here long enough to see the truth. The senior team and all of the leadership here are tackling all of those matters now. And they have already formulated plans on how to get these things corrected. But again, if we don't put it out in the public domain, then the perception of education is not going to change. And I'll give you an example. I was at Purvis Primary School yesterday to see their science fair. Charles, all of you, when you leave here, you need to go up there. I'll tell you why. When they gave the report on the high and the medium and low performing schools in math and science, Purvis was one of the highest schools. When you see the productivity in those science presentations, and I don't mean because it's pretty pictures and writing on a board, 2 of the children who won first place prizes actually presented it to me with clarity. That's what we're looking for, Charles. So whenever we have an issue, and that's why we're going to have these spread out, education needs to be told, and here's another classic example. How long do we measure the transition of the implementation of Hopkins? How long did it take for HSBC or any other financial institution to roll out the change of a banking system? We were promised on Friday, you'd have everything in order on Monday. Didn't work so smoothly. Took time. Well, we can't just switch over education like a light switch. It's going to take time. But the key, Charles, and this is very important, the more we put out in the public domain, the less there is there for confusion. Because then if someone has an issue, they can have a discussion based on the facts. And that's what we work with. And the more we talk to the public, the more we can hear back from them, because this is Bermuda's future.
Yeah, I guess maybe I consider misinterpreted, but I'm thinking that you're going to ask the public's opinion if you do it.
Oh no, we're going to lead.
Of course, that's what I said.
Oh yeah, we will lead consistently. Thank you.
Yeah, I did actually. I noticed over the past year or so there's been some challenges with staffing in some of the public schools. And speaking with Mr. Charles over at BUT, and he was saying, more substitutes was something he would have liked to have seen in the budget. I can't remember which slide it was on, but I saw it was something that I believe that's been cut back on. I wanted to know if there were still any issues with having enough staff in any of the schools, and if we've been able to get past it, how we've managed it.
I think you need to get as technical an answers as possible. I have a general idea, but I'm going to ask the PS to assist me with answering that question, because that particular question, and I'm going to tell you, this is the fun part about sitting in this post. I have not one, but about 4 masters. The children, their parents, the teachers, and the Minister of Finance. Because whether I'd like to have or not, and we took a very light hit in this budget, for which I am grateful to the Minister of Finance. We have to very carefully manage our resources PS, can you assist me in answering that question?
Just to, I think the question you were asking about Mr. Charles' concern, and I was going to show it through the money, actually. If you take 10-11, the budgeted at that time was 123 million. In each of these years, our budget was cut. If I went to the next slide, if you remember the slide on personnel, close to 65% of our budget is personnel, is people. So when you talk about cutting the budget, we're talking about people. And the only flexibility we have is with those persons who are not full-time, which are substitutes, paraprofessionals. So if the budget is cut, if you remember that slide, it's only 12%, 11%, which is program. So we can't cut program. That's direct services to children. So the only flexibility we have in cutting a budget is around the people. And there's been a commitment there will be no redundancies. So that means those staff were not permanent. In the upcoming year, you'll notice that our original estimate is our actual expenditure in 11-12. So that's the first time that we're getting about, at least since I've been here, that we're getting a budget that represents actual expenditure, as opposed to in each of those years, our actual being 128, and we got a budget of 113, as an example. It's an unrealistic place to begin with, and you start the year out trying to achieve that budget, and so you're making cuts. So to end on that point, will there still be issues with substitutes next year? Possibly. It will be determined based on, because substitute use is based on sickness, maternity leave, on leave and things of that nature. However, we're coming out of the blocks a little better than we have in the past.
Thank you. And let me say this, Jonathan. I'm looking forward to a very significant problem in 2013, an increase of students in the public education system. Because for the past 10 years, we've had a decline. Well, the more students that come through the door, guess what, Jonathan? We're going to have to hire more teachers. And that makes the reality that the transitioning of our system will achieve the validation that we're working for. Any other questions?
There was one other thing, actually, this has just popped to mind. When I was looking through the budget, I saw there was a big cutback in teacher training awards. But to be honest with you, I don't have a clue what those are. Either of you be able to help me with that?
Teacher training?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
The minister did allude to this. And really, the cutback is the 2%. But that's really related to cost containment, because the minister mentioned in his statement that for the Bermuda government scholarship, we have to pay full tuition no matter what school they go to, housing, airfare. And so you could have a student who is receiving a yearly stipend, I guess you could call it, in the region of $70,000, $80,000 if they're going to an Ivy League school. And so again, with the limited funds, we want to continue to provide for as many students as possible, but to be able to manage those funds.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.